Thanks for joining us today. I'm Katie Ozay. I'm the lead instructional designer here for the professional services team. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Ashley Neese. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to transform knowledge with challenge-centric learning. So let's get started. So first, we're going to cover a little bit about how to focus on the learner, because obviously the learner is what we're all here for. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the principles that that challenge-centric learning is based off of, how to reach that learner once we've defined who they are. And then we'll show you a demo of how we do that, just one of the ways that we do that. So, so before we get started on that demo and looking into those principles, let's take a quick look at our learner. So as instructional designers and learning experts here at Learn On Demand Systems, we strive to create training programs that have a valuable impact. And the best way to do that is to focus on what our learner needs. If their needs are met, then they're more likely to retain information and make valuable changes to their work that reflects what they have learned. To achieve this impact, we've broken it down into 4 steps that I want to share with you today. So the first one is to identify the business needs and the learner needs early in the process. While we advocate for learner-centric development, we still need to know what that business goal is. Using business goals to map to learner goals provides context to learners and to the training content. So this results in 3 main benefits. One is that you obtain buy-in from your learner, which I think, as we all know, is very important. They need to know why they're doing this and how it's going to affect them. And then you also, you're able to quantify your results for measurable data, and data is king. And then finally, we can create effective training based on those learner needs. So all of that analysis tells us exactly what we need to do to make it effective. Second, we combine findings from both business goals and learner needs to create sound objectives that speak to both parties. Ensure your learners know early on what they're getting into. So to do this, we draft objectives based on the quantified business goal and the defined learner metrics. We use action verbs that match the level of learning and the course and how the course will be targeted. And then we detail the conditions with the desired learning and the performance needed to ensure that measurable criteria is indicated for those conditions. While many learning professionals understand this, it's especially important for challenge-centric learning. As you'll see when we get to the principles of this type of learning, we need a clear definition of what tasks our learner needs to be able to successfully complete, and the level of difficulty that will serve as a learning environment, which we'll get to here in a little bit. By building objectives this way, you are communicating effectively with the learner and not just reflecting the content. This sets the expectation for the learner about the training and helps promote their buy-in. So third, we rely on relevant, experience-driven techniques, like incorporating challenges that reflect the learner's environment with their design, anchoring practice opportunities and relevant scenarios, and then providing specific, actionable feedback is crucial to the learner's success. By putting experience first, you allow learners an opportunity to apply that knowledge. We give them a safe space to fail or to succeed. Hopefully they succeed, of course, but we know that we learn a lot from failure. And we make sure that that environment is relevant to what they need to successfully accomplish post-training. And we'll have some examples of that here a little bit later. And then finally, we don't want to scrimp on assessment. It's a valuable tool that can be used as a learning strategy itself and has even greater impact when it's carried over into daily on-the-job tasks that continue to be evaluated for effectiveness. This is where that data comes in, where we can actually quantify how well people are doing at the job that they've been given. So before we approach the challenge of creating challenge-centric learning, let's revisit our levels of learning as a reminder to identify those levels early on, alongside our efforts to define our learner, and how this is just as important of a step. So as you can see, we have 4 levels: engagement, knowledge, changed behavior, and business performance. And they often build on each other. For example, a positive engagement can lead to deeper learning, which can lead to successful changes in behavior, which then finally impacts performance in a positive way. More often than not, a challenge-centric approach is going to have the greatest impact on changed behavior, which is really good news because that's exactly the target that's needed most of the time and is most difficult to achieve. And better still, a challenge-centric approach can often enhance other more traditional approaches that can have a solid impact on knowledge and engagement. Blending different kinds of learning allows us to take a nuanced approach that leads to better business performance overall. We want to share a few of the guidelines we always operate with here at Learn on Demand Systems. We think through learning and design and development in a very specific way, and we try to apply that wherever we can. There are especially relevant for challenge-based learning, but these come in handy regardless of your philosophy on training design. So the first one is that content must facilitate deep learning, problem solving, and reinforcement of current skills. A good approach to achieve this is something called lean learning. The Harvard Business Review summarizes this as such. So it's all about learning the core of what you need to learn, applying it to your real-world situations as soon as possible, and then receiving immediate feedback so that you can refine your understanding over time, and then just simply repeating that cycle over and over again. So you also want to make sure that labs and activities are problem-centered and focused on end results rather than procedure-specific. We're promoting the idea that it doesn't always matter how a learner gets to the end result, it's as long as they achieve that stated goal. Step-by-step efficiency is sometimes very valuable. We all know that there are processes where the step-by-step is important, but more often than not, it's really just that final result is the most important part. So instead of running the risk of losing your learner in the minutia of that step-by-step process, we want to encourage that results-driven mentality. And then third, we empower our learners to figure it out. So this goes hand in hand with the idea that you want to avoid procedure-oriented training whenever possible, and instead steer your learner towards their goal and encourage them to explore those opportunities to achieve that goal. Exploration and discovery, reinforced with opportunity for practice, leads to deeper, stickier learning and more consistent changed behaviors overall. And then we want to encourage a fail fast and fail forward approach. We say this a lot around here. And really it just means that when you're learning a new skill, it will always involve moments of failure. An example I like to use a lot is artists. We rarely come across an artist who is born with the talent that they become famous for. And so we apply this idea to challenge-centric training. If a learner fails, then that's great. The feedback that they get is provided so that they can continue to improve. And then we can take advantage of that opportunity to learn even more from that failure and to try again. All right, so now that we've set the stage, let's look a little bit at our 6 principles. So I'll just read through them real quick. We're going to look through them one by one, but first we're going to anchor learning in task-based challenges. And then we design for desirable difficulty. We provide lean, on-demand guidance. Principle 4 is to provide the meaningful practice and feedback. And then we use assessment as a learning strategy. And then finally, we integrate new skills into daily work. Our first principle relies on the fact that most effective learning is anchored in real challenges. Real challenges are tasks and problems derived from daily work. The tasks can be represented as scenarios or technical or conceptual simulations, or simply a series of steps towards a desired outcome. Task-based challenges immediately provide that learner with an opportunity to act by solving a problem or completing a task. In doing so, the learner's attention and prior knowledge are quickly activated. They are psychologically engaged and motivated to seek out learning resources that help them with that challenge. So there's that problem solving we've been talking about. They often will make mistakes and they'll receive that feedback that we've been talking about, and then they adjust and they try new strategies, they problem solve, and the results here is that there's dramatic improvement in those learning outcomes. So we want to focus on what the learner needs to do. As we have already established, the outcome is sometimes far more important than the procedure. Our second principle is based on compelling research from cognitive scientists that suggests that difficulty in completing learning tasks actually increases engagement, motivation, and learning retention. This is one of my favorite ones. So our goal for effective learning program is desirable difficulty. Challenge-centric learning provides the vehicle necessary for achieving appropriate difficulty levels that can be tailored to an individual learner. As learners accept the challenges presented to them, their attention, prior knowledge, and motivation are activated in pursuit of that goal. Initially, learners might find a peaked level of difficulty uncomfortable, even counterintuitive to the ideal learning environment. I think often adult learners prefer to understand the process, and learning a process sometimes can be difficult during a difficult situation. But that difficulty actually promotes enhanced knowledge gain and long-term retention of that behavioral change. So that's what makes this, desirable. So there are several ways that we approach how to implement desirable difficulty. First is to space out repeated learning opportunities over a longer period of time. Likewise, inserting those opportunities within job tasks, even after formal learning is complete. So think about this as a refresher. When you're on the job and maybe you've forgotten part of the task you're supposed to accomplish, then these repeated opportunities to keep learning can be really valuable. So number two is to provide variation in learning opportunities and challenges, and then to interweave concepts and tasks to mimic those real-world settings. And then finally, we can provide intermittent feedback to support the learner in critical thought and application of new knowledge, whether that knowledge comes from a failure or a success. So how difficult does the challenge have to be? This is a common problem that people face, and this is sort of what my job is for as an instructional designer. I'm here to identify through analysis what that desired outcome should be and to steer engagement in the right direction to find the optimal challenge point, or what we like to call the learning zone. If I make the challenge too easy, then the learner is bored and finds less value in engaging. But if we make it too challenging, then the learner gets frustrated and quits. So we spend a lot of time analyzing who our learner is, what they need, and where they're starting from, so that we give them the right amount of difficulty in order for them to learn. All right, so principle number 3, this is another great one. Here's where we advocate for lean, on-demand guidance for the learner. While we're all familiar with the present, practice, test, design approach, we're advocating for something more active. Instead of pushing our learner along through the process, sort of as if they're on rails, we want the learner to pull content from relevant points and resources. A good challenge creates a natural curiosity that demands a psychological resolution. It respects the integrity of the learner's activity, and it motivates them to pull that learning they need in order to solve that problem. So really, we're trying to turn the workforce into a bunch of problem solvers, let them know where their resources are and how they can help them, but then leave them to use them in the appropriate way. This approach takes some attention to detail, though. Development of training no longer follows long established norms, and all learning materials and resources that explain these concepts are explicitly associated with learning challenges and are available via exploration rather than process. So principle 4 is about providing valuable feedback and guidance to our learner. Anders Ericsson, a renowned researcher and professor of psychology at Florida State University, did much to advance our understanding of what he called deliberate practice. In his journey to understand what researchers acquired their superior performance, he found that practice must be designed to improve performance. It must be based on authentic tasks. Good challenges and problems all provide a safe environment for practicing these tasks, making errors, and receiving relevant and meaningful feedback. But the practice must be challenging. Mistakes are expected and a natural outcome of desirable difficulty, with meaningful feedback, which is corrective, free from judgment, intermittent, data-driven, and objective. Learners can gain greater learning opportunities than what is possible through the traditional content-based programs. They are able to reflect on their outcomes and adjust their own processes towards these stated goals. And I think I missed a few clicks here, so give me a moment. Sorry about that. Okay, so principle 5 is it's one of my favorites. Honestly, a lot of these are my favorites, but this one is really great. We talk about using assessment in innovative ways, and this one's important to me because oftentimes assessment is skipped when we talk about training. It can feel daunting in order to apply metrics and data to training when it can feel like something that's so personal and specific to each of your learners, but it's an important tool. We talk about using assessment in innovative ways. Testing and assessment can and should be used as a strategy for the development of knowledge and skill. Far too often, we only see assessment as a tool to indicate the level of knowledge attained, but frequent low-stakes testing and assessment serves as practice in retrieving information and skill routine from our memory. Learning challenges are a cumulative assessment to show skill attainment, but they can be used anytime in a learner's journey to practice, strengthen, and refine the skill routines they use at work. So while we do think of assessment as that data collection for the business to understand how we're achieving our goals, for the learner, it can be a moment in time where they get to test those skills for themselves, make an evaluation of where they're at in their own learner journey. So the same learning challenge can be used for 3 important skill assessment purposes. As a pretest to assess entry-level skill and establish an appropriate starting point. As part of the skill development process, practicing and strengthening the skill routine in memory. And then finally, a skill attainment at the conclusion of a learning challenge. A post-test can be in the form of a self-validation or a scored assessment. Finally, we're at principle 6, and this one covers what we do for long-term learning. The ultimate goal of any learning program is the transfer and integration of new skills into daily work. Training develops immediate skill, but it remains fragile unless it's refined and strengthened through repeated application in the workplace. I think we've all been there where we take training and then 2 weeks later, we kind of forget some of it, and it's because we haven't had a chance to practice it and make it part of our routine. So the practice of challenge-based learning provides a unique advantage over traditional methods. When challenges are created based on real-world tasks, the transfer is immediate and the application begins with re-entry to the job. In contrast, learning challenges can be made available to employees at any time. They can be used in reference to a real on-the-job task. They can also be used to refine skills through continuous spaced practice, or even to assess skill when reskilling or upskilling is necessary. They are also quickly updated and improved as practices and skill requirements change over time. So they really can grow with the learner. These are all key factors in the transfer of learning on the job. I like to think of it as learning that never stops. You continue to challenge learners at a steady pace and as necessary to keep those skills fresh and to evaluate possible changes in needs for both the learner and the business. Nothing is static, nothing is set in stone. And so evaluating over time and making small adjustments as necessary can really help with that learning process and to make sure that everything really sticks and that your learners are well equipped for their on-the-job changes as well. All right, so before I hand things over to Ashley, where she's going to show us a little bit of this in action, I wanted to just end on the idea that learning about challenge-centric design. This is something I've been doing over the last a year probably, and I've come to the conclusion that the way in which these principles are applied, it's not so different from what learning professionals like myself are already doing. When we work through our preferred methodology for creating training materials. What is innovative is how they are applied to the end product. So this is really good news, right? We don't have to change anything we're doing now. It's not reinventing the wheel, it's good news, but it's still exciting to think about this in innovative ways. So I have a couple of examples about how this works. So for example, in principle 1, anchoring learning in task-based challenges. During the analysis phase of any project, we immediately define the business processes and key tasks for the role of or technology that we're analyzing. And I often find myself thinking, okay, what knowledge does the learner need in order to meet that stated goal? But a better question when we're thinking in terms of challenge-centric learning is what tasks does the learner need to complete to meet the stated goal? Let's think about the salesperson if we're doing some sales enablement. They have a new product that they need to sell. So what do they need to do to effectively sell that product? Maybe they need to be able to recite a new elevator pitch. So let's get them working on drafting that pitch, and then we can create a rubric for them to pitch against. This is actually something I've built several times before. And they can use this to self-evaluate how they do on that pitch, or maybe they get some feedback from a manager who has that same rubric. But either way, they get practice and they can increase their skill in selling that product. During design, segment challenges into learning paths and map to specific objectives. We can treat the challenges as you would content in traditional training, while the challenges are filling a specific need. And then in implementing content, we can provide support for learners to use new skills on the job in the form of immediate feedback, as well as via skill evaluation upon reentry to that job. So this goes back to that rubric, and this covers principles 5 and 6. So using assessment as a learning strategy, and then also integrating new skills into daily work. Okay, so I think that's enough for me. I'm going to hand things over to Ashley, and she's going to show us how Score Labs can be an effective tool in challenge-centric learning.
Great, thank you so much, Katie. And bear with me, everyone, here, just as we do a flip of monitors and so forth. I appreciate it. Katie, great job. And to those online, thank you so much for attending today. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you. So today, I would like to share with you Learn on Demand Systems Challenge Labs and how they embrace the principles and the tenets of challenge-centric learning that Katie has just shared with you. So a little context and background on the Challenge Labs. Challenge Labs differ from traditional labs that you may be used to seeing. So instead of prescriptive step-by-step or inch-by-inch method, and I like to think of that as, hey, right-click on folder X, open file Y, rename it to Z. Challenge Labs are shorter duration, they're scenario-based, they're action-oriented hands-on labs, and the best part is that they include a means of validation or scoring. It's the scoring and validation that enable learners to assess their skills quickly, simply, and effectively. So Challenge Labs, and you will also sometimes hear me just refer to them as challenges, they're developed in varying levels of complexity. So remember Principle 2, one of Katie's favorites, the desired difficulty. It's these levels of complexity that we develop, and we actually develop them in a hierarchical design. That hierarchical design allows a learner to start from either kind of a bottom up or a top down. We actually encourage our learners to explore the levels of complexity. This way they are learning by doing or discovery. The goal of Challenge Labs obviously is not to focus on the process, i.e. that inch by inch method we just talked about, but that the final results are achieved correctly. And how do we know they're achieved correctly? It's using that scoring and validation model in there. So next, we're going to be looking at the differences as well as some common threads between our 3 challenge levels. The 3 levels are guided, advanced, and expert. Before we start, though, a few elements I want you to keep in mind as, like say, we look at the challenges themselves. You should notice common themes, that they're scenario-based, they're goal-oriented. The instructions themselves are going to be simplified in tone. We have on-demand guidance. We mentioned already the varying levels of difficulty. And then again, my favorite part is that they do provide validation and meaningful feedback. So let's go ahead and take a look at the guided challenge here. So just a little orientation on this page and on the couple of others that we'll see. Title page will be here on your left. Detailed instructions, and I say detailed instructions, Challenge Lab instruction pages in the middle and your hints there on the right-hand side of the screen. So out of the gate, out of those elements we just reviewed and I ask you to keep in mind, I'm hoping you are noticing a goal-oriented tone in both the name of the challenge as well as in the instructions or the task that we are asking students to perform. You will notice we're telling learners to take action, create this, enable this, then deploy this patch. This is identifying a task at hand so they can start taking necessary actions. And this way they're actually learning by doing. And if they get stuck, it's okay. We provide them with guidance. Remember that on-demand guidance that we just talked about. Learners can choose to call that guidance up, but only if needed. So the guidance we provide is in form of a hint, which you'll see indicated by the light bulb here on the instruction page. And then over, just here to your right, is the detailed view of what that hint actually looks like. The hints in our guided challenges show students how to achieve the solution. It is intended to be a breadcrumb trail, and it can be in the form of several different items. Here you're actually seeing we provided in a bulleted list of items that they could perform. We're also providing a short video that would show exactly what actions to take as well. So again, this is the breadcrumb trail if someone were to get stuck and, like say, needed that help. What I'd also call your attention back to in the middle pane here is the check your work section. This is where the validation occurs. For our guided challenges, we ask the learners to reflect on the actions they've taken and then validate that they are seeing the correct outcome in their lab environment. If they can't validate the correct outcome, that's okay. They can try again. And if needed, they can even employ the hint next time around, again, to achieve success there. Moving on to our advanced challenge, and again, hearkening back to those common threads, goal and action oriented, simplified instructions, but in the advanced challenges, we're gonna start upping the ante. So first of all, the number of the task as well as the complexity of the task will increase from that of a guided challenge. So again, take a look at that title. We're now posing it as a question. Can you implement a SQL database by using secure distribution? If you can, awesome, great, let's go prove it in this challenge. And I should say, how do students go through and actually prove it? It is going to be through that scoring and validation model. In the check your work section, and again, I'm going to say here in the middle pane, if you take a peek, students actually receive feedback on the actions they've taken in an advanced challenge, and it lets them know which actions, again, they have performed correctly or incorrectly. Sidebar, semi-spoiler alert, we'll go through and take a look at this in action in just a second. But it is, again, that feedback that allows them to take the correct action. And then remember, again, the common thing we want to talk about was on-demand guidance. So if you look at the hint here, again, just as an example, the hint highlighted by the light bulb, but then over to your right, the details of it. For an advanced challenge, it's in a different format. Remember, we said we're going to up the ante here, right? We want it to be that desired level of difficulty. And so this time the hints we're pointing them to actually point to official vendor documentations as to where they could actually find the solution for the challenge. So remember, in guided, we kind of gave them the breadcrumb trail, right? For advanced challenges, we're teaching them how to fish, so to speak, there. And so let's go ahead and actually take a look at the expert. So now at the expert level, this is where we want learners to prove mastery of their skills. If they have mastery of skills, then they really should not need guidance or hints or feedback along the way. So with that in mind, looking here at the middle pane again, you will notice that the hints and check your work sections are no longer there. It is literally just the instructions. This, just as a side note, is a very similar experience to what students, learners may also see on vendor certification exams that employ scored labs, or again, what you may sometimes hear referred to as performance-based testing as well. Kind of continuing that theme, the feedback that we provide in expert level challenges is in the form of a pass-fail report, which you can see here over on the right-hand side of the screen. The score, the results are presented to the user at the completion of the challenge. Again, very similar to the behavior or experience they may see on a PBT exam. In this instance, though, however, if they pass, of course, that's fantastic news. But if they fail, again, it's okay. Remember that fail fast, fail forward. They can try again. They can try this challenge again, or they can get additional practice and exposure by going back to those underlying levels. And again, remember, we talked about the challenges are developed in a hierarchy. So it's those underlying levels that will continue to reiterate, again, the skills, the requirements, and so forth that are needed within the expert labs. So with that in mind, let me actually flip screens here just momentarily. And I would like to show you the challenge labs in action. And so what we're seeing right here is actually, an advanced challenge. So again, very similar to what we just saw in our screenshot. However, on the left-hand side of your screen now, you're actually seeing the Azure portal. So obviously we're doing an Azure exam. Also a little bit of a spoiler, I have done a little pre-work in this section. So before I cruise us through quickly, you can see again, very direct goal-oriented steps, tasks that folks have been asked to take. Again, in the hints, you're seeing those little light bulbs there. But then in your check your work section, I'm actually going to select this verify. And this again is the beauty. It's my favorite part, right? This is saying, hey, learner, have you created a server for the database? Hey, have you created an Azure SQL database as the primary database? And you can see it is providing to me the exact actions, even down to the detail of what I named the SQL database and, like, say, the actual name of the server as well, providing me with the insights if I need to take corrective action and so forth. And just to further demonstrate that point, I'm going to pop to the next requirement within that challenge lab and also show you again, just as we're verifying the work, and if I did this appropriately, we shall see, if I have performed something correctly, or again, if it's incorrectly, what steps I need to take. And so in this particular instance here, I actually didn't complete the second step on purpose, just again, so you can see that it's telling me the exact action again that I need to go back and fix there. So with that just in mind, and before I hand this back over to Katie, I want to just review us quickly again to think about the challenge labs, obviously, that we reviewed and how they highlight the challenge-centric tenets that we've discussed as a group today. So again, remember, there's deeper learning and problem-centered, and that's how we achieve that, by providing the learner with the scenario up front. Then it's followed by goal-oriented and simplified instructions, which really sets the tone for the learner to explore and discover. And again, remember, that's kind of our mantra, our guidepost with Challenge Labs, is that we want learners to feel empowered. We want them to learn by doing and figuring it out along the way. In particular, you saw, or we highlighted again, that hints are on-demand guidance, and it's how we wrap in that fail fast, fail forward approach. Think about the placement of where the hints were as well. It's after the task. So a learner can take a swing at that task first, and then they can, like, say, apply or lean in on that hint if needed. And then it's the real-time validation in feedback, which really embraces the fail fast, fail forward approach again. It's the learner, or excuse me, it provides that learner with the insights of what's correct, what's incorrect, and really what needs more work. And then don't forget, again, we also have the varying levels of challenges within that hierarchy model that provide a desired difficulty level. And so with that, I would very much like to thank you for your time today. I hope you're as interested and encouraged about challenge-centric learning in Scored Labs as we are. And like I said, we thank you again for your time today. And with that, Katie, I'm going to shift back to you and let you close us out.
Thanks, Ashley. Such a great demo. I love seeing it every time. And so with that, just to share a couple resources we have. So we do have an ebook that covers the 6 principles we've talked about today. So if you want to just check them out in a little more detail, feel free to go to the link on the slide here and download it for yourself. It's a great one. I learned a lot. As you'll see a lot of it mimics what we talked about today. And I found it to be a really great resource. I also just want to call out here real quick that the professional services team really loves challenge-centric learning. We're all about it. From Ashley's demo, you can see we have a lot of readily available challenge labs, but we can also help you build your own, and then couple them with something like courseware or technical writing tasks. We wield a lot of job aids that help too with on-the-job training. So if you have something that you need, let us know, because we love building this kind of stuff and we love helping others build this kind of stuff. So, so we hope to hear from you about that. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time today. We do have a little bit of time for Q&A, so if anybody has a question, I think pop it into the chat pod, and hopefully we can answer a couple questions. I thought I would lead it off here because I don't see any posted yet, but I had one for you, Ashley. While you were doing the demo, I was thinking, what kind of data can we pull out of those challenge labs?
Great, thanks, Katie. So it is very interesting the data we can pull from the challenge labs, obviously out of our platform in particular. So it varies in degrees, if you will. So it's so much from the fact of duration that a particular candidate or a learner may, again, spend in the challenge. We can see if they have completed the challenge or if they abandoned the challenge. But more importantly, and again, kind of getting down to the whole crux of it, right, or the exciting part, is that we can also pull up their detailed score or assessments as well. So as a learning manager, a HR manager, a training manager, it's an excellent tool, again, just to put forth to your students or learners, again, just to see where they may need more work. This may be an idea, again, of just for departmental training objective or areas need to focus on. So we actually, and I know I'm taking us a little bit off of a segue here, but obviously I'm a little passionate about it and you can tell I'm into it. We also have another client that uses challenge labs and obviously the data they can retrieve from the challenge labs and part of their recruiting and screening process for their new hires. And so before they may put, again, their candidates before the hiring committee, or again, perhaps like say the hiring manager, they will go and specifically choose challenge labs from our existing library for folks to take a swing at. So again, they know what skill set, or I should say at least what skill level the candidates may be coming in at. And like I say, kind of use those results also to drive the interview and the questions within the interview as well. So I hope that helped. Boy, did I take us on a segue sidebar.
All right. Well, you can always reach out after the webinar, of course. We're here to answer questions, have conversations about challenge-centric learning, whatever might come up. So, but thank you again for joining us today. We have a few additional resources. So if you want to learn more, please do visit us at our services page at the link on the screen. Also, please join us for our Did You Know demo. We do those weekly on Thursdays. And you can find the schedule at the link on the screen. And then finally, you can dive a little bit deeper. We do monthly lab developer workshops, and then we also have our quarterly launch event. It's a 2-day event for all of our lab developers and operations managers and our business development managers. So again, we've got all those links on the screen. And thank you for your time today. We had a great time. Ash and I love chatting about challenge-centric labs with you, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.